Good morning once again. I hope this day I find you well. I remember the last time I shared or I encouraged you, we were speaking about being bold on behalf of the Lord. Remember, we are co-workers with Christ. Christ went through various crisis situations, but because he was focused on the Father, he achieved his mission on earth. Now, we preachers of the word are fond of using biblical characters that are so great and mighty. The Moses, for example, David, and so on and so on. But I want to just show you something this morning. Maybe it might encourage someone. That even the characters that are not so widely spoken about in the Bible can still manifest, can still encourage us and show the boldness that we too can develop in the pursuit of our goals, in the pursuit of our calling. It is these characters that we don't usually talk about, that we find lessons for life, lessons in this life. And let's read from 2 Samuel chapter 15. I'll read from verses 19. We meet here a rebellion by Absalom against his father David. And David is escaping Jerusalem. He's running away from his son. And in verse 19, it says, Then the king, that's King David, then the king turned and said to Ittai, a leader of the men from Gath, Why are you coming with us? Go back to King Absalom, for you are a guest in Israel, a foreigner in exile. You arrived only recently, and should I force you today to wander with us? I don't even know where we will go. Go back and take your kinsmen with you, and may the Lord show you his unfailing love and faithfulness. But Ittai said to the king, I vow by the Lord and by your own life that I will go wherever my lord the king goes, no matter what happens, whether it means life or death. David replied, All right, come with us. So Ittai and all his men and their families went along. Now, we meet a foreigner in Israel. This guy was a foreigner in Israel. And because of what he had seen on David, the hand of God upon David, when Absalom plotted to kill or to take over the throne, Ittai chooses to go with David instead. Now, this name is mentioned only in that section and nowhere else in the Bible. Now, why Ittai? What is it about him? What is it? Verses 21 to 22, for example. Let's just read those again. Verses 21 to 22. I vow by the Lord and by your own life that I will go wherever my Lord the king goes, no matter what happens, whether it means life or death. And David says, All right, come with us. So Ittai and his men and their families went along. Now, we find a foreigner coming on board. There were so many captains in the army of David, but there was none like this guy. There was no one so courageous as to encourage the king, but a foreigner. A foreigner encourages David. Right? David's right-hand men were many, and they were running away with him. But it took a foreigner to encourage David. If you read through that story, this guy and his own army was then sent ahead of the armies of Israel. Why? Because then David saw something in this guy. He saw loyalty, he saw trustworthy, he saw courage. He says, if it means I die for you, I will die. This is the kind of courage that we need as children of God. Even in foreign lands, even in strange places where we are never known, we can still call upon the name of the Lord and be saved. And everybody around us is saved. We can still encourage, in brackets or in quotes, big people, kings. We can still speak a word to the king, and hope is revived in them. Now, let's just turn quickly to Exodus, the book of Exodus chapter 1. I want to show you two other examples, verses 16. Now, when you help the Hebrew women as they give birth, watch as they deliver. If the baby is a boy, kill him. If it is a girl, let him live. But because the midwives feared God, they refused to obey the king's orders. They allowed the boys to live too. Let me check that verse once again. But because the midwives feared God, they refused to obey the king's orders. They allowed the boys to live too. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives. Why have you done this? He demanded. Why have you allowed the boys to live? Listen to how they respond to that. The Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. The midwives replied, they are more vigorous and have their babies so quickly that we cannot get there in time. So God was good to the midwives, and the Israelites continued to multiply, growing more and more powerful. Now, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom and understanding. Where there is boldness, there is wisdom of God. We need to be smart, like these two, Shipara and Poya. We need to be smart in the pursuit of our assignment. Now, these two ladies chose to obey God instead, because there is something they saw amongst the Israelites. There is something they saw in the God of Israel, and they wanted this God too. And hence, they disobeyed the king's orders. Now, up to this day, I want to believe that Israel is still grateful for what these ladies did. Imagine all those sons could have died. But because these two ladies chose to obey the Lord instead, the Lord gave them wisdom. Yes, we can be quick to say they lied before the king, but they could not take orders from the king. They chose, in the wisdom so afforded to them by God, they chose to obey God instead. So they feared God and they disobeyed the command. So this is an act of boldness. This is an act of faith. This is an act of exercising wisdom. The wisdom as they were given liberally by the Lord in the fear of God. Not only were they bold, but they were calculating as well. So bold people calculate. Bold people see beyond what the common person does not see. Bold people are enabled, especially if they are people of faith. They're enabled by God to see beyond what everybody else is seeing. They understood very well that the law of God supersedes the laws of man. That they understood very well, and they kept on that kind of line, to obey God and not to follow the commands of man. Israel did survive. Israel did get to the promised land because of what other people did in their assignment as they walked the face of this earth. I want to encourage you this morning that you too can play your part. Don't ever underestimate the things that you do for God. They might seem so tiny and small before the Lord, but they are great. These were midwives operating in a small room, in a clinic, if you want. Right? They were not even seen by many, but they did wonderful and mighty things. We too can do such things. I advise the king in a war situation, a foreigner, we too can do that. You have an opportunity to make a difference. You have an opportunity to impact your local community. Even in our crisis, pandemic situations, you have an opportunity to display, to do good works, to deposit life in other people, to speak life in other people. It is your opportunity. I want to encourage you. Obey God, and God will shower you with all the wisdom you need to navigate strange areas and situations. God bless you, and stay focused on the cross. Thank you very much.